The Milky Way galaxy was once a peaceful place where different civilizations thrived and coexisted. For centuries, the galactic concord had maintained the harmony. This massive council brought together beings from countless star systems, ensuring that any dispute was settled without violence. It was a shining example of unity across the stars, where species shared knowledge and resources. But peace, as it often does, was fleeting. One dark day, a new threat emerged. It was not a weapon, nor a fleet of invaders. It was something much worse, an enemy that couldn't be fought with guns or bombs. It was the Zithar plague, a horrific bioorganic swarm that seemed to consume everything in its path. It didn't just destroy cities or ships. It wiped out entire planets, leaving nothing but ashes and dust. The plague spread quickly, like a wildfire, and no matter how advanced the species were, they couldn't stop it. At first, the Galactic Concord thought they could contain the plague. Their best scientists tried every possible solution: shields, energy fields, and powerful weapons. But nothing worked. The Zithar, as they called it, was beyond anything anyone had ever seen. It adapted to every defense. It was as if the swarm itself was alive, constantly evolving, always one step ahead. Soon, entire star systems fell. The once proud cities and civilizations became graves. As hope began to fade, the Galactic Concord did what they never imagined they would have to do. They sent out a distress signal. This wasn't just a call for help. It was a plea, a cry from every corner of the galaxy. The message was broadcast to every known civilization. In it, the Concord begged for someone to intervene. They needed help. The message traveled across the vast expanse of space, searching for any race that might still be willing to help. But who could they turn to? The galaxy's most powerful species had already fallen, their fleets scattered, their homeworlds reduced to rubble. There was no one left to help, or so they thought. That's when humanity received the call. Earth, a small blue planet on the outer rim of the galaxy, had long been seen as insignificant by the other species. Humanity had only recently joined the ranks of the galactic community, still learning about space travel and interstellar relations. Most believed humanity was still far behind the others, both technologically and culturally. They didn't possess the powerful fleets or advanced weapons that the older species did. But humanity had something else that was rare across the galaxy: a spirit of survival. When the distress signal reached Earth, it wasn't met with skepticism or hesitation. Instead, it sparked something deep within the human heart. For years, Earth had been a small player in the grand scheme of the galaxy, but now, there was an opportunity to make a difference. Humans had faced countless challenges on their own homeworld, from wars to natural disasters, but each time they had come out stronger, more united. Could they do the same for the galaxy? World leaders and scientists gathered in emergency meetings. They saw the suffering of the galaxy, and they knew they couldn't ignore it. Earth was not a mighty power, but they had one advantage: determination. The people of Earth had never given up, even when faced with impossible odds. Now, they would answer the call. The decision was made quickly. A fleet of ships, led by the newly built Starship Endeavour, would be sent to assist the Galactic Concord. Humanity had nothing to lose, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could be the ones to turn the tide. The message was simple, but powerful. For the galaxy, for all life. The Galactic Concord was initially unsure what to make of humanity's offer. Their scouts had barely ventured beyond their home system. The Council doubted that Earth could provide anything of value. But they had no other choice. Time was running out. The Zithar were consuming everything, and the end was near. So, with some reluctance, they accepted humanity's offer of help. As the Endeavour set course for the war zone, humanity's leaders were filled with a sense of both fear and hope. They were venturing into the unknown, but they would not turn away from the fight. The fate of billions depended on them, and for the first time in galactic history, a species not known for its might or technology would take a stand against the most terrifying threat the galaxy had ever known. Little did the galaxy know, the answer to their problems might just come from the most unexpected place, Earth and its people. The Endeavor was humanity's best hope. As it powered through the stars toward the heart of the galaxy, the crew aboard the ship felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty. They were headed to an unknown war zone, a place where the very existence of entire civilizations had been wiped away by the relentless Zithar plague. Captain Alina Morales stood at the bridge, staring at the star-filled expanse ahead, her mind racing with the enormity of what lay ahead. Back on Earth, the world had come together like never before. The decision to join the fight against the Zithar was not one taken lightly. It was a choice born from desperation and courage. Earth had always been isolated, surrounded by the vastness of space, but now, in the face of extinction, humanity had found its voice. Leaders from all nations gathered in a historic meeting to discuss the call for help from the Galactic Concord. Despite their differences, they agreed on one thing: Earth could not stand by and watch the galaxy crumble. They knew they didn't have the advanced fleets or powerful weapons that other species had, but they had something else, a unique ability to think outside the box, to come up with solutions in the face of overwhelming challenges. It was this ingenuity, this ability to innovate under pressure, that would be humanity's greatest weapon. The decision was made. Earth's best scientists, engineers, and military leaders would work together to prepare for the mission. The Endeavor was designed to be the most advanced starship Earth had ever built, equipped with state-of-the-art technology. It was fast, agile, and most importantly, equipped with experimental weaponry and defense systems that had never been tested in real combat. Some of these innovations were risky, but they were humanity's only chance. The Endeavor wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of humanity's resolve. The people of Earth had rallied behind the mission. Every continent, every country, had contributed in some way, whether through technology, resources, or soldiers volunteering to fight. Even those who had no direct role in the war felt the weight of the decision. It was a fight for survival, not just for humanity, but for the future of the galaxy. On board the Endeavor, Captain Morales addressed the crew for the first time. She was a veteran of space battles, having served in numerous conflicts on Earth's front lines. But this was different. The Zithar plague wasn't a normal enemy. There was no clear front line, no set battlefield. The swarm moved like a living, breathing organism, spreading its destruction across the stars. The crew had to be prepared for anything. "Listen up," she said, her voice strong and steady, yet filled with a sense of urgency. "We are not just fighting for Earth, we are fighting for everyone. The Galactic Concord may be the ones who called for help, but we are the ones who will answer. We may not have the numbers or the power that others have, but we have something more: our will to survive and our ability to adapt. We will fight smart, and we will fight together." The crew responded with a unified cheer, their spirits lifted by the captain's words. They understood the stakes, and they knew the road ahead would not be easy. But they were ready. As the Endeavor hurtled through space, Earth's leaders remained in constant communication with the ship. They tracked the ship's progress, sending messages of encouragement and support. Humanity had never faced a challenge like this, and it was clear that they were determined to prove themselves. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Galactic Concord, officials watched the Endeavor's journey with a mixture of skepticism and hope. When they first received the offer from Earth, many of them had doubted whether humans would be able to contribute anything of value. But now, as the Endeavor made its way deeper into the war zone, the leaders of the Concord realized that they had underestimated humanity. Earth's decision to act, to fight, had rekindled something in them, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy might still be saved. As the ship neared the war zone, the crew began their final preparations. They had to be ready for the Zithar in all their terrifying forms. The Endeavor was not just a warship, it was a tool of innovation. Its scientists and engineers had developed weapons designed to disrupt the Zithar's hive mind, and its shields were capable of withstanding energy blasts, unlike anything the crew had ever seen. The crew was nervous, but they were also determined. "We're ready, Captain," Commander Alexei Petrov said, his voice calm but filled with anticipation. Captain Morales nodded, her eyes hard with resolve. "We don't know what we'll face when we arrive, but we do know one thing. We are humanity, and we don't back down." The Endeavour arrived at the edge of the war zone, where the shattered remains of once thriving worlds now floated in silent ruin. The Zithar had already spread their plague across dozens of systems, leaving nothing in their wake but desolation. But the humans aboard the Endeavour were not afraid. They had come to answer the call. The time for hesitation was over. Now, humanity would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The Endeavour drifted silently in the dark expanse of space, its crew anxious yet determined. Captain Elena Morales stood on the bridge, staring out into the void. Ahead, a star system lay in ruin. Where once there had been vibrant planets and bustling colonies, now there was only emptiness, broken debris, and floating wreckage. The Zithar plague had already moved through the system, leaving behind nothing but destruction. The first human fleet to enter the war zone was now approaching the heart of the conflict. The Galactic Concord had sent a few ships to hold the line, but their efforts had been futile. The Zithar, with their ever-adapting biology, had outsmarted every strategy. It was clear that something new was needed, and humanity was their last hope. "This is it," Commander Alexei Petrov said from his station, his voice low but filled with tension. "We're entering the system. Expect resistance." Captain Morales nodded, her hand steady on the console. "Maintain formation. Stay sharp. We don't know what we'll face." As they drew closer to the destroyed planets, a strange silence filled the air. There were no signs of life, no communications from the other ships in the area. The crew of the Endeavour had trained for this moment, but now that it was real, the weight of what lay ahead settled on them. They weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting for the survival of everyone. Suddenly, a soft chime rang through the bridge. The sensors had detected something. It was faint at first, a small blip on the radar. Then it grew stronger, dozens of them. The Zithar swarm had arrived. "Contact. Multiple targets closing in fast," shouted Lieutenant Maya Garcia, her voice tight with urgency. The Endeavour's weapon systems powered up, but Captain Morales held her hand up. "Hold your fire. Let's see what we're dealing with." The Zithar ships weren't like anything the humans had ever seen. They seemed to be alive, their forms shifting and pulsing as if they were made of both metal and flesh. Some ships were small, darting in and out of the debris field, while others were massive, like dark, living fortresses. The swarm was unlike any army the galaxy had encountered before. There was no clear command structure, no way to predict their movements. They simply attacked, overwhelming anything in their path. "Captain," Commander Petrov said urgently, "they're surrounding us. We can't maneuver." "Get us out of here," Captain Morales ordered. "Activate evasive protocols. Don't give them a target." The Endeavour jolted as it accelerated, narrowly dodging incoming fire. The Zithar ships were relentless, their energy blasts cutting through the emptiness of space with deadly precision. The ship's shields flared with each impact, but they held strong, designed to withstand the heaviest of hits. Yet the crew could feel the strain. The Zithar were testing their defenses, probing for weaknesses. "Shields holding, but they're weakening," reported Ensign Alex Mendez, his voice tense. "We can't take much more of this." Captain Morales's mind raced. She knew they couldn't keep running forever. There had to be a way to fight back. "Lieutenant Garcia, activate the decoys. We need to confuse them." Garcia nodded quickly and tapped her console. A series of holographic projections flickered to life around the Endeavour. These decoys would create false readings, confusing the Zithar ships and drawing their attention away from the real target. It was a risky move. If the Zithar adapted to the decoys, it could backfire. But it was humanity's best chance. For a moment, The Zithar paused, confused by the sudden appearance of multiple Endeavor targets. The swarm shifted, some ships breaking off to attack the decoys, while others remained focused on the Endeavor. It wasn't enough to escape them entirely, but it gave the crew a brief window. "Now, Commander," Captain Morales shouted, "fire on their central ship. Aim for the core." With quick precision, the Endeavor's main cannons locked onto the largest of the Zithar ships. A brilliant beam of energy shot out, slamming into the heart of the enemy vessel. The explosion was immediate, bright and blinding, as the ship's core destabilized. The shockwave sent several smaller Zithar ships spiraling off course, creating a temporary lull in the battle. But the Zithar weren't finished. They adapted quickly, and soon the remaining swarm regrouped, angrier and more determined than before. "We're not out of this yet," shouted Lieutenant Garcia. "They're regrouping. Another wave incoming." "Hold steady," Captain Morales ordered, her voice unwavering despite the chaos. "We've got one shot at this. Get ready for the next round." The crew was exhausted, but they weren't about to give up. The Endeavor was humanity's best chance, and they had already proven they could survive. As the Zithar swarm circled once again, the crew braced themselves for what was to come. They knew this was just the beginning. The real battle for the galaxy was only starting, and humanity had just made its first stand. The Endeavor drifted slowly through the shattered remains of the star system. The battle had been intense, but they had survived. The Zithar swarm had been driven back, at least for now, but the victory had come at a great cost. The ship was battered, and the crew was exhausted. Captain Elena Morales stood at the bridge, staring out at the wreckage of the destroyed Zithar ship. It had been their first real success, but she knew it wasn't enough. The Zithar were still out there, and they were relentless. "Captain, we've got a problem," Commander Alexei Petrov said, his voice grim. He turned from his station, his face troubled. "The Zithar are adapting too quickly. We've only delayed them, not stopped them." Captain Morales nodded. "We knew this wouldn't be easy, but we got to find a way to beat them. We can't keep fighting this way." The crew had learned one painful truth from their first battle. The Zithar were not just a mindless swarm. They were intelligent, and they adapted to every attack. Conventional weapons weren't enough. Earth's best technology had given them an advantage, but it wasn't enough to guarantee victory. "That's not the only problem," Lieutenant Maya Garcia added, her tone tense. "We've intercepted some strange signals from the Zithar. They're not just attacking randomly. There seems to be some sort of coordination, a command structure." Morales turned to face Garcia. "What are you saying?" "I think the Zithar might have a central intelligence, a hive mind," Garcia explained. "We've seen this kind of behavior before in certain alien species, but this is different. The swarm isn't just acting on instinct. They're being controlled by something." "A hive mind," Morales repeated. She crossed her arms, thinking. That could explain why they're so difficult to fight. If there's one central force guiding them, then taking it down could cripple the whole swarm. The crew began to work quickly, analyzing the data Garcia had collected. They knew the Zithar were no ordinary enemy, but the idea of a hive mind opened up new possibilities. If they could find the source, the central node controlling the swarm, they might be able to disrupt the entire network. But there were no guarantees. The Zithar's hive mind might be hidden, buried deep within their swarm, and finding it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. "We need to find that central core," Captain Morales said, determination in her voice. "We've got one shot at this. If we can destroy their hive mind, we might have a chance to end this war before it spreads any further." The crew set to work, poring over the data, searching for any clues that might lead them to the Zithar's central intelligence. Days passed as they scoured the wreckage of the Zithar ships they had destroyed, looking for anything that might give them a hint. But the Zithar were a mystery, and the deeper they dug, the more difficult it became to understand them. It was Dr. Ravi Kapoor, the Endeavor's chief scientist, who finally found a breakthrough. He had been studying the strange signals that the Zithar emitted during their attacks, trying to understand their patterns. What he discovered shocked him. These signals, he said, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. They're not just simple communications. They're biological. The Zithar aren't using conventional technology like we do. They've evolved a way to communicate through their own biology. It's like their whole species is one giant, living computer. That would explain their ability to adapt so quickly, Commander Petrov said, his eyes narrowing. If their hive mind is biological, it could be incredibly difficult to detect or destroy. We've been looking at this all wrong, Dr. Kapoor continued. The Zithar's hive mind isn't some central processor sitting in a single location. It's spread across their entire species. Every Zithar ship, every Zithar in the swarm, is a part of the whole. Their intelligence isn't in one place. It's everywhere. Captain Morales' mind raced. If the Zithar's hive mind was truly spread across their entire species, that meant they couldn't simply target a single location. They would have to disrupt the entire swarm at once. It was a terrifying thought, but it also gave them a new path forward. We need to find a way to disrupt their communication network, Morales said, her voice steady but intense. If we can break their connection, we can stop them from coordinating their attacks. Dr. Kapoor nodded. I've been working on a device that could send out a signal strong enough to interfere with their biocommunication. It's not ready yet, but it's the best chance we've got. The team worked around the clock, pushing their resources and technology to the limit. The device was a long shot, but it was humanity's best hope. As the Endeavor continued to patrol the war zone, preparing for the next battle, the crew knew that they were running out of time. If they didn't act soon, the Zithar would overrun the galaxy. Captain Morales stood at the bridge, staring out into the vastness of space. The war was far from over. But now, they had a new weapon, knowledge. And with that knowledge, they would fight to the very end. The Endeavor floated silently in the darkness of space, the bridge filled with tense anticipation. After days of research and planning, the crew was ready. They had uncovered the secret to the Zithar's hive mind, a biological network that spread throughout the swarm. If they could disrupt that network, they could take down the Zithar once and for all. But it was a risky plan, and they would have only one chance to execute it. Captain Elena Morales stood in front of the crew, her face set in a hard line. The weight of their mission was clear in her eyes. We've come a long way, but this is only the beginning. The Zithar have shown us what they can do. We have to show them what humanity is capable of. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. We know how to defeat them now. We know how to stop their hive mind from communicating. But it's going to take everything we've got. We strike now, or we risk everything. Commander Alexei Petrov stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with urgency. The device Dr. Kapoor designed is ready. It can emit a signal strong enough to disrupt the Zithar's biocommunication. If we can get close enough to their central hub, we can use it to break their control. The room fell silent as the crew absorbed the plan. Getting close to the Zithar hub wasn't going to be easy. They would have to venture deep into enemy-controlled space, right into the heart of the swarm. The Zithar wouldn't let them get close without a fight. We'll need a distraction, Lieutenant Maya Garcia said, her eyes scanning the tactical map. Something to draw their attention while we sneak in. We can't afford to be detected before we're in position. Captain Morales nodded. We'll send out a decoy ship. It will simulate the Endeavor's signature and draw the Zithar away. Our real target will be the central hub. Once we're close enough, we activate the device. It was a risky plan, but there was no other option. They couldn't afford to hesitate. The Zithar were too powerful, too adaptable. If humanity didn't act now, the galaxy would fall. As the crew prepared for the mission, tensions were high. There was no guarantee they would make it back. The Zithar were relentless, and their hive mind made them incredibly dangerous. But the Endeavor had something the Zithar didn't, human ingenuity. The decoy ship was launched, a smaller vessel built to mimic the Endeavor's energy signature. It shot off into space, its engines glowing brightly as it sped away from the main ship. The crew watched it on their monitors, waiting to see if the Zither would take the bait. Minutes passed. Then, suddenly, the sensors blared. "They're following the decoy," Garcia reported, her voice tense. "The swarm is moving in." "Good," Morales said. "Now, let's move." The Endeavor's engines roared to life as the ship surged forward, cutting through the darkness. They had to be fast. They had to get in and out before the Zither realized what was happening. As the ship approached the Zither's central hub, the crew braced for impact. They were now deep within enemy territory, surrounded by hundreds of Zither ships. The Endeavor had to avoid detection at all costs. "Shields up," Commander Petrov said, his voice calm but tense. "We need to stay invisible until we're in position." The ship glided silently through the space, its stealth systems in full operation. Every member of the crew was on edge, knowing how close they were to danger. The Zither's central hub was a massive, pulsating structure, floating in the middle of the swarm. It was unlike anything the crew had ever seen, an organic structure, part ship and part living organism. "We're almost there," Captain Morales said, her voice steady but urgent. "Prepare the device." Dr. Ravi Kapoor, who had been working tirelessly to perfect the disruptor device, stood at his station, fingers flying across the controls. "It's ready, Captain. All we need is a clear shot." The Endeavor was now within striking distance. The Zither swarm was all around them, but the decoy ship had successfully pulled most of their forces away. The crew held their breath as they maneuvered into position. "This is it," Morales said, her voice low but resolute. "On my mark." The crew waited in silence as the captain's hand hovered over the button that would activate the disruptor. They had worked for days to get to this point. They couldn't afford to fail. "Mark," Captain Morales shouted. In an instant, the device activated. A powerful pulse of energy shot out from the Endeavor, sending a wave of disruption through the Zither network. The pulse was designed to interfere with the Zither's biological communication system, cutting off their ability to coordinate with each other. For the first time, the Zithar were flying blind. The central hub seemed to shudder, its pulsing energy fading for a moment. Then, like a wave crashing against a shore, the Zither began to lose control. Their ships scattered, confused and disoriented. The swarm was no longer a unified force. The hive mind had been severed. "We did it," Lieutenant Garcia exclaimed. "The swarm is breaking apart." But their victory was short-lived. The Zithar were adaptive. It wouldn't take long for them to regain control. Captain Morales knew they had only moments before the swarm reassembled and attacked with full force. They had to get out, and fast. "Get us out of here," Captain Morales ordered, as the Endeavor began its retreat. The crew's hearts raced as the ship powered up, ready to escape the chaos they had just unleashed. They had succeeded in disrupting the Zithar, but they knew this was far from the end of the war. The Endeavor sped away from the Zither's central hub, its engines roaring as the crew raced to put distance between themselves and the chaos they had just caused. For a brief moment, there was a sense of relief. The Zithar hive mind had been disrupted. The swarm was in disarray. They had won, but the victory was fleeting. The Endeavor was not out of danger yet. "Shield holding, Captain," Lieutenant Maya Garcia reported. "But the Zithar are regrouping fast." Captain Elena Morales gripped the armrest of her chair. "How long do we have before they catch up?" Garcia's fingers flew over her controls as she checked the readings. "At this rate, we've got maybe 10 minutes before they're back to full strength." The crew exchanged nervous glances. The Zithar might have lost their coordination for a short time, but the swarm was vast and adaptable. They wouldn't stay disoriented for long. The Endeavor had made its move, and now it was time to run. "Can we jump to hyperspace?" Commander Alexei Petrov asked. His voice was calm. but his eyes betrayed his worry. "We need a clear path," said Ensign Alex Mendez from the navigation console. "The Zithar are blocking all routes. They've set up a perimeter around us." Captain Morales's mind raced. The Endeavor had the technology to escape, but the Zithar had already adapted to their last move. The crew had to think fast. They were in enemy territory, surrounded on all sides by the swarm, and there was no easy way out. "We need to create an opening," Morales said, her voice decisive. "Activate the decoy again. Pull their attention away." "Aye, Captain." Garcia responded immediately, deploying decoy ship now. Once again, a small, unmanned ship launched from the Endeavor. It mimicked the energy signature of the Endeavor, tricking the Zithar into thinking it was the main vessel. The decoy ship shot off into space, drawing a portion of the Zithar's attention. For a few moments, the Zithar hesitated. It was just enough time for the Endeavor to move. "Now's our chance," Commander Petrov said, his eyes focused on the screens. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." Captain Morales gripped the armrests again, her heart racing. "Take us out of here. Full speed ahead." The Endeavor darted forward, weaving through the wreckage of the Zithar ships that had fallen victim to the disruptor pulse. But the Zithar were quick to adjust. They had already begun to regroup. Smaller Zithar ships darted in from the periphery, cutting off their escape routes. "We can't keep this up for long," Garcia said, her voice tense. "They're closing in on us." "Hold on," Morales said. "We're not done yet." The Endeavor hurtled toward the edge of the system, pushing its engines to their limits. But even as they gained speed, the Zithar were right behind them. The swarm was relentless, and it was closing in fast. Morales knew that they wouldn't make it out unless they acted quickly. "There's no way we can outrun them," Commander Petrov said, his voice low. "We need to make a stand." "What do you mean?" Morales asked, glancing at him. "We have the disruptor," Petrov replied. "If we can get close enough, we can use it again, cause another wave of confusion. It'll give us a window to escape." It was a bold plan. They were already on the edge of the system, with no time to waste. The Endeavor couldn't afford to be surrounded. It had to break through, and the disruptor was their best weapon. "Are you sure it'll work again?" Morales asked, her gaze locked on Petrov. "There's only one way to find out," Petrov said. "But we'll need to get close, really close. We're not talking about a gentle nudge this time. We need to hit them hard." "Do it," Morales ordered, her voice firm. The crew worked quickly, preparing the ship for another round of disruption. The Endeavor pushed through the broken debris field, moving toward the incoming Zithar with determination. The Zithar ships were closing in, their dark forms looming larger on the screens. "Brace for impact," Lieutenant Garcia called, her hands tightly gripping her controls. The Endeavor's engines roared as the ship darted forward, flying directly into the heart of the Zithar swarm. Every second counted now. The Zithar were almost upon them. "Activate the disruptor now," Captain Morales commanded. Dr. Ravi Kapoor, who had been working tirelessly on the device, slammed his hand down on the activation button. A massive burst of energy shot out from the Endeavor, the pulse more powerful than before. The Zithar ships around them staggered, their coordination breaking down once again as the biocommunication system was torn apart. For a moment, the Zithar were lost in confusion. Their ships veered off course, their focus shattered. The Endeavor surged forward, pushing through the chaos. But the Zithar wouldn't stay disorganized for long. "We've got to get out of here," Garcia shouted. "They're coming back together." With a final burst of speed, the Endeavor broke through the Zithar swarm, narrowly escaping the attack. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the battle wasn't over. They had made their escape, but the Zithar were already regrouping, preparing for their next move. "We've bought ourselves some time," Captain Morales said, her voice steady. "But we need to regroup and figure out our next move. This fight is far from over." The Endeavour was limping through space, its engine sputtering slightly from the intense pressure of the last few battles. But the crew had survived, and they had made it out of the heart of the Zithar swarm, at least for now. The Zithar were still out there, adapting, learning. It was only a matter of time before they would come for the Endeavour again. Captain Elena Morales stood in the quiet of the bridge, staring out into the cold, vast expanse of space. The battle had been brutal, but they had done the impossible. They had struck a blow to the Zithar hive mind, and for a brief time, they had won. But Morales knew that they couldn't run forever. Sooner or later, the Zithar would regroup and find them. "We need to end this," she said quietly to herself, her voice steady despite the weight on her shoulders. "We need to finish this war before it spreads any further." Commander Alexei Petrov entered the room, his expression grim. "Captain, we've done everything we can. We've disrupted their communication. We've struck at the heart of their swarm, but we're still far from winning. The Zithar are like an endless tide." "I know," Morales said, turning to face him. "But if we don't act now, we'll lose everything. We've seen what they can do. We've seen the destruction they're capable of. It's time to make the final stand." Petrov nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "But what can we do? We don't have the numbers. The Zithar are too many." Morales' eyes hardened with determination. "We might not have the numbers, but we have something they don't. We have the will to fight, and we have our technology, our knowledge." Dr. Ravi Kapoor entered the room, a data pad in his hand. "Captain, I've been running the numbers. There's a way we can strike a final blow to the Zithar. It won't be easy, but it's possible." Morales' gaze locked on Kapoor. "Tell me." "The Zithar's hive mind is biological. We've already shown that we can disrupt their communication, but there's a deeper connection within their network, a core node that drives the entire system. If we can find that node and destroy it, we can sever the hive mind for good." "You're sure?" Petrov asked. "Destroying the core could cripple them entirely." Kapoor nodded. "That's our best chance. The core is hidden deep within their swarm, surrounded by layers of defense. It's their last line of defense, and if we destroy it, we cut off their communication permanently." The captain took a deep breath, weighing the decision. "Then that's what we'll do." The crew immediately began preparing for the mission. They didn't have much time. The Zithar were recovering from their previous disarray, and they wouldn't be distracted for long. The Endeavour had to move quickly. "We've got one shot at this," Captain Morales said, addressing the crew. "This is it. We find the Zithar's core, and we destroy it. We do this together. We can win this war." The crew nodded in silent agreement, each person knowing the risks involved. The Zithar were relentless, and even with their strategy in place, there was no certainty they would succeed. But they were human, and that was enough. The Endeavour moved toward the heart of the Zithar swarm. The closer they got, the more tense the atmosphere became. The ship was surrounded by Zithar vessels, and they had to stay undetected as long as possible. The crew worked in sync, their focus sharp. The decoy ship was launched again, leading the Zithar away from their true target. "This is it," Morales said as she stared at the tactical display. "We're in position. Prepare the disruptor." Dr. Kapoor made the final adjustments to the device, ensuring it would be powerful enough to breach the Zithar's defenses. They couldn't afford any mistakes now. The core node had to be destroyed in one clean strike. "Ready," Kapoor reported. Captain Morales took one final look at her crew. "Make history." With a deep breath, Morales gave the command. "Fire." The disruptor released a massive pulse of energy, sending a shockwave through the Zithar network. The pulse cut through the layers of defense and struck the core node. For a moment, everything was still. Then the entire Zithar swarm seemed to tremble. The core node flickered, then disappeared. The connection between the Zithar ships faltered, and they began to break apart, no longer under the control of their hive mind. "We did it," Commander Petrov said, his voice filled with awe. "It's over. They're falling apart." The Endeavour crew watched as the Zithar fleet scattered in disarray. The swarm had lost its central intelligence, and without it, the Zithar were nothing more than a collection of lost ships. The war had ended, not with a single battle, but with humanity's determination to overcome an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Captain Morales allowed herself a brief smile, but the victory was bittersweet. The cost of the war had been high, and they had lost many along the way. But they had survived. Humanity had answered the call. "We did it," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Humanity won. The Endeavour set course for home, knowing that the galaxy was safe. For now. But Morales also knew that there would always be new challenges. The universe was vast, and humanity had just begun to show what it was capable of. The fight was over, but the journey had only just begun.